What is good, NIO family? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And this one will break down what's going on with NIO stock, what you should be watching for moving forward. I'm also going to break down the technicals for Tesla, SPY, the QQQ, and NIO, and talk about what my price predictions are for tomorrow and this week. Now, before I break things down about all this information, before I talk about what's going on with the overall market, what the news is saying about NIO, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. The offer ends very soon, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. All right, guys. NIO is down 2.04% for the day, trying to hold up. At least this was as of for Friday. And overall, it's not looking too bad, but it is looking like NIO is starting to cool off a bit. So we're going to be watching these supports very carefully. But the question is, how is the market looking? How may the market end up affecting NIO? And that's why I want to break down some important earnings for you guys. Now, to start off the week, please remember we have some big earnings coming out that will affect the whole market, and these earnings will affect NIO. The market got a nice pop on Friday before it started to cool off a bit, and overall, we got some red closes on SPX, the Nasdaq, SPY, and etc. As a result of that, this led to NIO following the trend, at least to some degree. There was also signs of weakening demand in China, which affected Apple, and all these different factors affected the whole market, and then that also affected NIO to another degree. So it had to do with Chinese news and also the whole market's performances, which resulted in NIO closing red for Friday. Right, so the market does affect NIO, and that's why it's important to look at what affects the market. Now, for Monday, after the market closes, so we don't have too much going on before market open, but after the close, we have some big bank earnings. We have Bank of America, Charles Schwab, and big earnings for Tuesday. And then for Wednesday, it's going to be the biggest day of the week, as we have Goldman Sachs, we have Ally Bank, the Nasdaq, we have Tesla, Netflix, United, and IBM, and all these big earnings coming out for Wednesday. So it's going to be a very big day. And in terms of economic data for Monday, there's not really anything significant coming out. We have the New York Empire State Manufacturing Index, and besides that, like I said, there's just not much else going on. Now, later on, going into like the week after this week, we have the FOMC meeting coming, and that's going to be the next biggest thing for the markets. But until then, there's not as much big data coming out. Now, for this right over here, we had some good news coming out for NIO. The ET5 and EL7 earn a 5-star safety rating in Europe, and that's some very, very good news for them. Europe came out and they're talking about how NIO has some amazing cars which are very, very safe, and they're getting some very, very good tests from the 2023 Euro NCAP standards. So that's some very, very good stuff for NIO. Bullish news overall, and I'm still very, very bullish, at least for the longer term. But for the short term, things are still looking like NIO is going to be heavily dictated by the markets. Now, the price price ratio started to go up quite a bit, but now it's cooling off just a little bit, which is showing a little bit of weakness for the stock. On top of this, Morgan Stanley has said that the NIO is likely going to outperform the market. They were right so far about that. And Mondays tend to be green only about 49% of the time. So Mondays tend to not be that strong for NIO. We tend to do better during Tuesdays and Wednesdays historically. And then July tends to be a good month for NIO. Well, so far in July, NIO was pumping. It's already in like the $11 area, but it is going to likely slow down with the markets once I show you some more interesting things. Now, the short interest on NIO did go down just a little bit on Friday to about 9.3 million, but it is still a little bit higher than these phases back here in May. Anyways, looking at NIO, let's talk about some important things. We have a bearish cross on the PPO on NIO. It's trying to retrace right over here. And it's going to be testing the 50 EMA at 10.36 most likely. Now, we might see NIO try to bounce a little bit off of this. Maybe it gaps up in the morning, then starts cooling off a little bit more. But please remember that NIO is most likely going to be dictated by the market as well. Now, NIO has some data coming out for deliveries and registrations a little bit later on. After that data comes out, that could affect NIO. But until then, we have some time before it happens. And we're just going to be watching the market. So I'm going to talk about SPY and all these others first before I talk about NIO. The thing about SPY is we're sitting on this bearish divergence that has been developing. And on top of this, I want to add that we're about to get a bearish cross on the PPO on the 4-hour time frame. The last time this happened, SPY went from 444 all the way down to about 436. And there was another time it happened right here, and we could see SPY went all the way down from like 445 all the way down to 431. And right here it happened, SPY went from about 430 all the way down to about 425. So we tend to see the market drop quite a bit when we get these bearish crosses, and we're very close to getting it. Now we got this bearish divergence rejection, so the odds do favor the market cooling off and maybe starting to fill these gaps all the way down around like the mid 440s. But just for confirmation, watch and see how it reacts around 448. If it breaks below that, we're likely going to see this thing sink down to around the mid 440s in my opinion, around 445 or so, and below that, watch 443. Now, if we get a nice bounce, however, when we see this thing break above 452.5, we're likely going to see SPY continue to push up and the market's going to hold up quite nicely. But looking at how Apple has been performing, underperforming because of demand changes in China, there's a chance that we could see the market cool off, and I think it's most likely going to be the case. So watch 448, a break below that. That is going to be our confirmation. I think the odds favor that. To add on to that, for the QQQ, we're also on the verge of getting a bearish cross on the PPO, and this thing is getting a rejection. And to add on to this, I mean, I know saying it's overbought is not always very sufficient, but it is technically overbought. And there's, this bearish divergence that has been developing. I know I mentioned this like during my previous video. So you can see the RSI was like at much higher places. Right here, the RSI is still suggesting that it's overbought, but on the MACD, we have this bearish divergence. Now, this tells me that we're going to likely see the NASDAQ and the QQQ start to fill some of these gaps down here. We could see this thing retrace a bit, but it may try to hold up temporarily before it continues to drop. So if it breaks below 378, we're going to likely see this thing come all the way down to about 373 in my opinion. If it breaks 383, it's going to push all the way up to about 385 plus. I don't think that's going to happen. Looking at this chart, it looks more bearish than bullish, and the odds favor downside, just like what I said for SPY. However, we may have one company that outperforms the market quite nicely at the very least, and that is Tesla. On the 4-hour time frame, we got this bullish cross in the PPO, and there is technically a bearish divergence that has been developing, so it may retrace by the time we open for Monday, but then it may start to push up again. And I'm saying this because Tesla tends to get lots of volume and tends to start pushing as we approach earnings. And there's a chance we're going to see Tesla pump very nicely to at least 295 or so, if not 300. Now, for confirmation, if it breaks 285, we're going to most likely see this thing get very close to 300 in my opinion. I think it's very possible. Looking at this nice structure on Tesla, it's forming kind of like a cup and handle like structure. It looks like Tesla wants to start running. You also have to remember that as the market like pumped, it started to slow down, right? When the market was slowing down, Tesla started pumping and outperforming the market and actually broke the high it made previously. On top of this, Tesla closed green when the market closed right on Friday, so it's showing some strength. I think there's a good chance that it's most likely going to start pushing to the upside and see at least 295 or so, if not 300 sometime this week, but as we approach earnings on Wednesday after the market closes. So I'm leaning more bullish on Tesla. But for NIO, I think NIO is more likely to be impacted by the whole market because NIO has this imbalance down here at this 9.87 area. There's also another one down here around 9.5. Now, NIO formed this bearish divergence right here. You can see it right here. It formed on Thursday and started to descend since then. I think what's going to happen in NIO is it's going to try to balance a little bit. In the pre-market or early on, it's going to try to like maybe retouch like 10.8, and it's going to reject again and start making its way down to this imbalance all the way down to like 9.9. And then if that fails us, it's going to come to the next imbalance around 9.5. I think the odds greatly favor a retracement for NIO. It may cool off a bit because of the market. However, we could get a very nice balance when delivery numbers come out. We have some registrations coming out in China, I believe, but those are not that significant for NIO. They're not like that impactful for how the share price moves. What impacts this thing a lot more is going to be the big deliveries numbers coming out in the next 2 weeks. So that's going to have a big effect on NIO. If NIO ends up killing it like Morgan Stanley has predicted, this thing is going to go flying to 13 plus in my opinion. It's going to go flying up. It's going to have a lot of upside in August if we get a very, very good delivery report for the month of July. And there's a good chance that's going to happen. So I'm still very excited for it. So I see this as another buying opportunity potentially, but I'm always prepared to dollar cost average if it does end up dropping even lower because of unexpected news in the future. But like I said before, I'm still very optimistic. I'm very excited, and I just want the best for every single one of you out there. All right. So with that said, thank you all so much for listening. I just wanted to add that I have another channel if you guys are interested in learning about more stocks out there. I know a lot of people want to just like learn about like Google or learn about what's happening to like Tesla or more details on the video. So if you want to check those out, you can check out my channel called Rey-Jay Invests. I have more tickers to talk about in that one, but this channel specifically is just about NIO primarily. It is centered around this. It is targeting that audience, people who are much more interested in this stock because it has so much potential. And there's a lot of retail hype behind the stock too, which is part of why I want to make this video to benefit you guys, to provide as much free content as possible. All right. So I don't really sell anything in the comments, by the way. I don't sell courses or anything like that. I'm just not really for that. I make my money through the markets. And I just want to make it clear that I'm doing this because I want the best for everyone. I want you guys to have free knowledge, and I want you guys to just do as well as possible in life because this knowledge, once again, could benefit a lot of people in their trading. It could also help them with learning about how the market moves and what things you should look out for when investing in a stock, right? From fundamental analysis to looking at the market, how the market's moving and the state that the market is in based off like macros and just other factors like that. All right, so I want the best for everyone. Please take care and enjoy the weekend. NIO to the moon as the long term is still very bright despite the potential downside coming. And peace out.